My name is Sabrina Ellis. I'm 27, and 3 days ago, my dad did something I didn't know a son could do to his own mother. He abandoned her. My grandmother, Eleanor Ellis, isn't just any grandmother. She's the founder of Ellis Freight and Cargo, a global shipping company that built its empire from a single rusted dock in Tacoma. She's tough, sharp, and she raised me after my mom passed away. 3 days ago, she flew to Kyoto, Japan, with my father. Only she never made it back. Dad left her there with no phone, no wallet, no passport, no way to get home, just a smile, a suitcase, and a lie. He told me it was a bonding trip, said it would be good for Grandma to travel before her health got worse. She's been battling early-stage Parkinson's, and the news wasn't public yet. He said she needed peace, but what he really meant was she needed to disappear. He said 4 words to her at the airport gate. I heard them. "You've done enough, Ma." And then he left. He got on the plane, alone. No guilt, no hesitation. His plan, get back to Seattle before anyone noticed she was gone. Change the locks, move the accounts, transfer the trust, lock down the entire estate before her diagnosis became public knowledge. He thought it was over. He thought he'd won. But what he didn't know, what he could never imagine, was that my grandmother, she saw it coming. And when he walked into the Ellis estate 3 days later, smug and ready to celebrate, Grandma was already home, waiting for him, with me, and we weren't smiling. Because what happened next didn't just shake our family. It shattered the illusion my father had spent years building. And that was just the beginning. My dad, Leon Ellis, has always been the golden boy. Polished, charismatic, the kind of man who can sell a sinking ship and still make you feel lucky to climb aboard. He's the favorite son. At least that's what everyone used to say. And then there's Uncle Marcus, Dad's older brother. The rebel, the wanderer, the kind of guy who shows up late to Thanksgiving, brings expensive wine, and disappears before dessert. He was never involved in the company until recently. Suddenly he's helping with the estate, sitting in on calls, dropping phrases like succession strategy and protecting legacy. It felt off, like a stage being set, but I couldn't see the script yet. I stayed quiet, but I was watching. After my mom died when I was 11, Grandma Eleanor became my anchor. She taught me how to sail, how to negotiate, and how to spot a lie in a handshake. She's sharp like that. Always 2 moves ahead. But a few months ago, she was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. It hit us hard, her body slowly betraying her. But her mind still sharper than anyone in the boardroom. That didn't stop Dad from swooping in like he smelled blood in the water. "Let us handle things now," Mahi said one night after dinner. He was smiling, but his eyes said something else. It didn't sound like reassurance. It sounded like goodbye. I remember the way Grandma set her fork down, the way she didn't argue, just nodded like she already knew where this road would lead. 2 weeks later, Dad booked a trip, said we all needed a break. Fresh air, new memories, Japan in the spring, cherry blossom shrines, healing energy. He sold it like a vacation. But even as I packed my bags, my gut wouldn't settle. Grandma hadn't traveled internationally in years. She hated being away from her staff, from her garden, from her routines, and yet she agreed. "I want to see Kyoto one last time," she told me quietly, "before the tremors make it hard to hold a teacup." I didn't push. I didn't ask questions. But the night before we left, I saw her sitting in her study staring at the old family ship log, the one her father kept, the one she never let anyone touch. She looked calm. Too calm. That's when it hit me. Grandma wasn't going on this trip for rest. She was going to test something. Or someone. And if I was right, this vacation wasn't a goodbye. It was a setup. Because my father, for all his charm, he never learned to play chess. He only knew how to bluff. And in our family, bluffing doesn't win you the kingdom. Kyoto was beautiful. It had that quiet kind of magic bamboo groves whispering in the wind temple bells, ringing in the distance, soft pink petals falling like confetti. Grandma lit up there. She told stories I'd never heard before. About hauling crates down at the docks when she was 14. About sealing contracts with a handshake and a dare. About how after the war she talked her way onto a cargo ship just to learn how it all worked from the inside out. There was something alive in her voice, and for a second, I let myself believe this really was just a memory trip. But Dad, he was working overtime. He handled the hotel check-ins, the luggage, the taxis, always offering to carry her things. Always with that same smooth smile. "Don't worry about a thing, Mom," he'd say. "I've got it covered." He even took her passport, said it would be safer if he kept all the travel docs together. I remember asking, shouldn't Grandma have her own? And he laughed it off. "She's not going bar hopping, Sabrina." I didn't argue, but my gut twisted a little tighter each day. Then came day 3. We were near the Philosopher's Path, walking past the canal lined with cherry trees. Dad turned to me and said, "Go grab us lunch, will you? There's a bakery down the street with those little custard buns Grandma likes." I hesitated. Something about the way he said it. The way he didn't wait for my answer. It felt like a cue he'd practiced. Grandma squeezed my hand. "Bring 3, she said with a soft smile. "And don't forget napkins this time." I left. 10 minutes tops. When I got back to the ryokan, something felt wrong. The lobby was too quiet. The front desk clerk gave me a polite bow but wouldn't meet my eyes. I asked room 203, the Ellis party. He paused, then said, "Ah, they have checked out." I froze. "No," I said. "That's not possible. I was just with them. We're not leaving until tomorrow." He checked again. Bags collected. Checkout processed. Keys returned. No one remaining. I felt the world tilt under me. I rushed to the room, but the door wouldn't open. My key card had been deactivated. I ran back downstairs. "Their luggage. Where is it?" He looked uncomfortable. "Taken by gentlemen. Earlier this morning." My heart started pounding. I called my dad. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. I asked the concierge if he'd seen an older woman with a cane and a younger man leaving together. He nodded. "Yes, about 30 minutes ago." I asked if she looked upset. He hesitated. She looked quiet. I ran to the hotel safe, asked to access the emergency contact items Grandma had left. They found her wallet. Still there. Her ID, her credit cards, her cash, but no passport. That was with my dad. She had nothing, not even a phone. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was a plan. It was betrayal in motion dressed up like a vacation. And I had walked right into it. For the first few minutes, I just stood there, alone in the hotel hallway, holding a bag of custard buns, watching the door that wouldn't open. Then something switched. I stopped panicking. I started planning. I ran to my room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. There was only one person I could call, Ms. Trina Wallace, Grandma's lawyer. She was the kind of woman who could make a banker cry without raising her voice. Sharp, relentless, no patience for nonsense. I didn't even say hello. "He took her?" I said. "He actually did it." Trina didn't gasp. She didn't sound surprised at all. Instead, she said, "Check the scroll case." I blinked. "What scroll case? In your grandmother's luggage?" She mentioned something called Project Tide Clock. "Look for it. Now." I dug through Grandma's suitcase, something I'd never done before. Beneath a layer of scarves and folded nightgowns, I found it. A lacquered scroll case. Inside, a small flash drive and a folded piece of stationery. Grandma's handwriting was clean and sharp like a blueprint. It said, "Sabi, if Leon moves fast, you move faster. This is your moment. Let them show their hands." I read it twice, maybe 3 times. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from focus. I plugged in the drive, and what I saw changed everything. There were audio files labeled by date. I clicked the most recent one. It was my dad's voice. Marcus, we need to file before the diagnosis hits the wire. Once she's declared incapacitated, the foundation becomes untouchable. Then, Marcus, and you're sure the notary'll sign off dad again? He already has. The doc says mild cognitive decline. No one'll question it. She's 81 and unpredictable. That's all the court needs. Another file was titled Bank Transfer Draft. In it, I heard them discussing how to split assets across accounts in Singapore and Zurich. Then, the forged letter. It looked like it was from her physician, but it wasn't in her doctor's handwriting, not even close. Trina was still on the line. I said they've been planning this. She said, "Of course they have. Your grandmother's smarter than both of them combined." She didn't just suspect it, Sabrina. She knew, and she didn't stop them. No, Trina said. She set a trap. That's when I realized. Grandma had let it happen. She let him bring her here. Let him isolate her. Let him make a move, because she wanted me to catch him in the act. She knew the law wouldn't help unless it had proof, fresh, direct, irrefutable proof. And now, I had it. Trina's voice turned brisk. "Here's what we do," she said. "Start with the consulate. Get her location tracked. File an incident report. Do not accuse your father, yet just document. Calm voice, clear story. You're not emotional. You're responsible." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. She continued. "Meanwhile, I'm unsealing Tide Clock back home. It triggers a full asset freeze if elder fraud is suspected and verified. You handle the human side. I'll handle the legal one." I asked, "What if I can't find her?" She paused. "Then we treat it like a missing person case." "But let's not borrow trouble." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed staring at the flash drive in my hand. All those stories Grandma told me as a kid about reading the tide before sailing, about letting the current show you the rocks. This was it. Project Tide Clock wasn't just a trap. It was a choice. And Grandma had given it to me. She didn't leave breadcrumbs. She left blueprints. And now, it was my move. It took 36 hours and a mountain of paperwork, but the U.S. consulate pulled through. They found Grandma. She was safe, tired but steady. The embassy in Tokyo issued her an emergency passport. They arranged a flight, booked a car, kept everything quiet. By the time my father's plane landed back in Seattle, Grandma and I had already been home for 12 hours, and we didn't waste them. Trina called in a locksmith, had the front and back locks changed. Maya, my best friend, and a junior partner at Trina's firm set up the house security to live stream directly to encrypted storage. We weren't just waiting, we were preparing. And right on schedule, he arrived. Leon Ellis, my father, the man who left his mother in a foreign country and thought he'd walk back into power like nothing happened. He pulled up in a sleek black SUV, stepped out in his pressed coat, holding a new set of keys in his hand, like a king returning to his castle. But when he turned that key in the lock, nothing happened. No click, no welcome, no entry. I watched from the upstairs landing as he frowned, jiggled the handle, tried again, then walked around to the back. Same result. Finally, he rang the doorbell. Grandma looked at me. I nodded once. She opened the door. She didn't flinch. She didn't raise her voice. She just stood there, small, steady, and unbothered. Leon blinked, then laughed like he'd walked into the wrong movie. "Ma, what how you left me," she said. Calm, almost kind, but I know how to get home. I built empires with less. He tried to recover, but the charm was already slipping. "I thought you needed space. You weren't feeling well." Grandma raised a hand, then looked at me. "Sabrina, play the audio." I pulled out my phone, pressed play. The living room filled with my father's voice, clear, cold, calculating. "Once we get her assets moved, we can spin it like dementia." He froze. His face drained of all color. The silence was heavy. No one breathed. Then he forced a chuckle. "That's out of context." "Is it?" I asked. I hit play on the next clip. "You get Marcus to lean on the physician. Get a letter saying she's erratic. I'll handle the notary and push through the filings. If she finds out, we spin it like she misremembered. Still, his voice. Still, no one else speaking. I looked him in the eyes. You weren't trying to help her. You were trying to erase her. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just the faint sound of the rain starting outside. Grandma didn't blink. She stepped aside slowly, letting the sound finish echoing off the walls. Then she said, "You always assumed power would be handed to you, but power built without character doesn't last." He looked at me, searching for sympathy. There wasn't any left, because that moment was when the tables turned. And the son who tried to erase his mother had just been outplayed by both of us. The next morning, everything moved fast. By noon, Grandma had filed for a temporary restraining order against both my dad and Uncle Marcus. Her lawyer, Trina, activated the Project Tide Clock Clause, a legal trigger built years ago into the family trust. If fraud was suspected by any heir, every asset froze. Bank accounts, stocks, property titles, company shares. It was all locked down before Marcus even rolled out of bed. That afternoon, the house felt quiet, but not peaceful, like the air was holding its breath. And then the doorbell rang again. Leon and Marcus side by side, Dad in another designer coat like armor. Marcus, clearly less confident than usual. He avoided eye contact with me. They walked in without being invited, but they didn't get far. Grandma stood in the center of the foyer, one hand on her cane, the other resting on the banister, like it belonged to her. Because it did. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. She just looked at Dad and said, "You thought that inheritance was your birthright. You forgot that legacy is earned." Dad opened his mouth, but Marcus beat him to it. "We were just trying to protect the family wealth," Grandma turned to him, calm, surgical. "And stealing it ensures that how Marcus..." He dropped his gaze. She nodded to me. I handed her a leather folder. She opened it, removed 2 stacks of paper, and held them out. "To both of you," she said, "here's the motion to revoke power of attorney effective immediately. And here's the civil fraud suit filed this morning." They didn't take the folders, so she dropped them on the entry table with a quiet finality that hit harder than shouting ever could. Dad's face darkened. "You're doing this with no proof? Just paranoia?" I said nothing. Instead, I walked over to the nearby console, tapped the laptop, and pulled up the screen. One by one, I clicked open the files from the drive. Emails, audio recordings, the forged capacity letter, the notary's signature familiar and sloppy. Then came the voice memos. My dad's voice, Marcus's too. Clear, unedited, impossible to deny. The room was silent except for their own words echoing back at them. Finally, Dad barked, "This is a witch hunt." But just then, 2 unmarked government vehicles pulled into the driveway. Slow, precise. I could see them through the window agents in plain clothes carrying official folders and quiet authority. They didn't come in with guns, they came in with questions. The lead agent introduced herself as Special Investigator Claire DeWitt with the Department of Financial Protection and Elder Justice. She looked at my dad, then at Marcus. "Mr. Ellis, Mr. Ellis. We're not placing you under arrest at this time," she said calmly. "But we do need to collect statements, seize all relevant documentation, and under federal statute temporarily hold your passports pending review." That was the first time my dad truly looked shaken. "On what grounds?" he asked. Claire didn't blink. Suspicion of elder financial exploitation, with interstate and international components. Dad started to say something, but then stopped. He knew arguing wouldn't help. He handed over his passport without a word. Marcus hesitated longer, but eventually followed suit. And then they stood there, stripped of their control, stripped of their story. In the house, they'd tried to take now as unwelcome as strangers. As the agents collected evidence and stepped outside, Grandma turned back to them One last time. No one stole this legacy from you, she said. You were born into it. You just never earned it. And with that, she walked away slowly, deliberately, leaving them standing in a silence they had created for themselves. The storm passed. The agents left. And for a moment, the house was quiet again. No yelling. No threats. No lies bouncing off the walls. Just the sound of the kettle whistling. Grandma and I sat at the breakfast table, steam rising from our mugs and silence settling in like an old friend. She took a long sip, then looked at me with eyes I'd known my whole life, clear, steady, impossibly tired. "Sabrina," she said softly. "I'm dying." The words didn't shock me. Not really, but they landed hard anyway. She didn't wait for me to speak. "I didn't fight them to punish them," she said. "I fought to protect the company, and maybe to give you a choice." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a thick envelope. It was sealed with wax, stamped with the Ellis Freight insignia. Across the front, Executor Transition Plan. I held it in both hands. My fingers went cold. She leaned forward and said, "Inside that envelope is my formal designation. You're named interim CEO." I blinked. "Me, you're not ready," she said with a smile. But neither was I at 27. My chest tightened. "I've never even run a division. I've never even—" "Exactly," she interrupted. "That means you haven't learned how to cheat yet. Make your own mistakes, not mine." I held the envelope like it might explode, and then I asked the question I'd been holding in my throat. "What about Dad?" She smiled just a little. "He gets the one thing he feared most." I waited. "A job," she said, "under supervision." I stared at her. "You're keeping him in the company." She nodded. "Not in leadership, not in finance. He's being assigned to fleet operations, safety compliance, real work, with a union mentor." "That's harsh," I said. "No," she replied. "That's mercy. Let him learn how to rebuild the way I did, from the bottom up." I looked down at the envelope again. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Then she reached over and touched my hand. This company was built on my back, and I've been carrying it longer than anyone knows. I looked up at her. "Then why pass it to me?" She didn't answer right away. She just smiled, soft, tired, proud. "Because you didn't take the shortcut, Sabrina. You chose the truth, even when it hurt. And right there in that quiet little kitchen, over 2 chipped mugs of Earl Grey, my life changed, not because I inherited something, but because for the first time I was being trusted with something bigger than myself. Legacy, not a gift, a responsibility. And now it was mine. They didn't go quietly. Leon and Marcus lawyered up fast. Big names, big egos, expensive suits, and louder arguments. They flipped the script so hard it almost tore in half. They claimed coercion, said Grandma had been manipulated by me, that she was mentally unfit, that I had orchestrated a hostile takeover while she was vulnerable and confused. They even tried to say I'd forged the recordings, that the documents were edited. The physician's letter, they said that was fake ours, not theirs. It was a circus. But Trina didn't blink. She was cool. Surgical, precise. No theatrics. Just facts. She walked the judge through every single breadcrumb one at a time. First came the forged emails. Dates metadata senders traced to Marcus's private domain. Then, the physician's letter. Turns out, the psychiatrist they used had lost his license 3 years ago. For fraud. Trina didn't even have to say anything after that. She just held the suspension notice up and waited. Then came the video deposition. Grandma, sitting upright, composed, answering legal questions, line by line with full clarity. No slurring, no confusion, no hesitation, just a woman in control of her mind and her empire. Their defense didn't stand a chance. Even their own attorney looked tired. I sat there holding my breath as the judge reviewed the exhibits. Then finally, she looked up from the bench and said, "The Ellis matriarch remains in legal control. The fraud claim is credible. The sons are barred from any asset management responsibilities effective immediately and indefinitely." No one moved. No one dared speak. And then I saw it. My father, Leon, stood up, shoulders tense, jaw tight, but his face didn't twist in anger, not this time. As he walked past me, I caught it, just for a second, a flicker in his eyes. Not rage, not defeat, but recognition, like he finally saw the truth. Like maybe for the first time he realized exactly what he'd lost and who he'd been up against. His mother, his daughter, and a legacy he thought was his just because he was born into it. But legacies aren't handed down. They're built. And he'd never lifted a brick. 3 months later, Grandma passed, quietly, peacefully. She died at home in her favorite chair by the window, wrapped in the same shawl she used to bundle me in when I was little. No fanfare, no drama, just a legacy, quietly landing in the right hands. Her estate transferred into the Ellis Women's Trust, co-managed by me and Trina, exactly as Grandma planned. We didn't hold a press conference. We didn't change the logo. We just went to work. Dad, he stayed. He took a position in fleet ops under compliance monitoring and a union mentor. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have believed it. But now, he shows up. He doesn't say much in meetings. He never argues, never challenges. But he listens. He takes notes. And sometimes, he watches me, like he's trying to figure out how I did what he couldn't. Marcus. He disappeared from the industry completely. Rumor has it he moved to Costa Rica. Or maybe Arizona. Doesn't matter. He removed himself. Last week, I found something on my desk before a strategy session. It was old, leather-bound, weather-worn, a ship's log. I opened it. Inside was Grandma's handwriting. A single note: build slow, build strong, forgive when you can, forget when it helps. I read it 3 times before the meeting started. That day, something clicked. I wasn't a survivor. I wasn't an heiress. I was a builder. And that was always the plan. If this story moved, you drop a comment and tell us what you think defines a true legacy. We post new real-life drama stories like this every day, so don't forget to follow the channel, like the video, and hit the bell so you never miss a twist. See you in the next one.